Joined by our Winnipeg Jets reporter, John Liu. John, training camp is open. Notable absence for the Jets. No Cole Perfetti as he looks for a new contract as a restricted free agent. The first two seasons of his career have been a little less than perfect. Back-to-back season-ending injuries, and he's a healthy scratch 11 different times in the second half of last season. Is he really in a position to push this thing?
Well, Gino, you kind of said it right there that as an RFA with no arbitration rights, Cole Peretti does not have leverage in this situation. And the fact that he hasn't played a complete season in his career. Yes, the first 2 years were out of his control due to injury, but the most recent season, as being a scratch down the stretch, Rick Bowness said repeatedly in the latter stages of this most recently completed season that he could feel and observe that Cole Perfetti was starting to wear down simply because he hadn't played that many NHL games before in his career, and so that there were signs in his play that were slipping, and so that the tack that the coaching staff took was to make him a healthy scratch. And Perfetti did take that hard. He really was quite devastated, and so it was a daily habit for Bowness to talk with Perfetti, to try to encourage him, to try to keep working behind the scenes and to keep his spirits up. But you put all of those factors together, and you can see that the Winnipeg Jets do not have a complete picture of what exactly Cole Perfetti is capable of in the short term. And so their preference is to go with a bridge deal, something short term in the 2-year range, in order to see what they have in Perfetti in the shorter term, but also to let Perfetti bet on himself, to try to hit a home run in those 2 seasons and really do well and elevate his play to the point that then they could talk long term. But on the Perfetti side, from their camp, they are seeking a longer term deal. But the thing is that the Jets typically have not done business in this fashion. If you go back just over 6 years ago, Cheveldayoff and Josh Morrissey were in the same position, with Morrissey coming out of his entry-level contract, and he signed a 2-year bridge deal. Then coming out of that, where he really started to elevate his play and show signs of what he was capable of, well, now he's in his current long-term deal, which he signed at the conclusion of his bridge, and he's a bona fide #1 defenseman, one of the elite blue liners in this league. And so I believe the Jets are trying to seek the same sort of development path for Perfetti, and so that's why there's a contract, a stalemate, an impasse in negotiations between what the team wants, short term, and the Perfetti camp wants, and that's longer term, Gino.
All right, let's shift to goaltending now. Last season, Connor Hellebuyck followed up his second career Vezina Trophy by falling flat in the playoffs, where his goals against jumped from a 2.39 during the regular season to 5.23 in the playoffs. Did anybody actually see that coming? And you know Connor Hellebuyck real well. How do you see him bouncing back from a playoff performance like that?
Well, Gino, I think that Connor Hellebuyck will bounce back simply because, well, take a look. He had his second Vezina Trophy winning season. He won the Jennings Trophy. His backup, Laurent Brossoit, as well as he played during the regular season, he didn't log enough starts to qualify being on the Jennings Trophy. So again, this was very much Connor Hellebuyck's season. He was world class. In the playoffs, you reference the increase in his goals against average from regular season into the playoffs. Well, the Colorado Avalanche, even though the Jets had their number during the regular season, the different animal, which is the postseason, Colorado came up with an absolutely superior game plan and executed it to a T. You take the power play, for instance, the Jets had no answer for that. They were unable to stop what Colorado threw at them, which was taking away all of Connor Hellebuyck's sight lines, clogging the middle, setting up screens. At 5-on-5, their puck pressure, the Jets didn't have an answer for that as well. So Connor Hellebuyck was in a situation, along with the rest of his teammates, where they just were outmatched by a superior opponent, except between the pipes there, his counterpart, game one, it was a wash. Both goalies did not play well, and then Colorado picked it up after that fact. So coming out of that experience, if we reference Connor Hellebuyck's comments in his final interview before the season began, he said that he learned in the playoffs that he had to change his mindset, and that was to embrace more of a team concept. And by that, he meant that he had been taking too much onto his own shoulders, and that's what world-class goalies will do, is that they're trying to do too much on their own and by themselves. Connor Hellebuyck learned a very valuable lesson. Now, he's not going to be forthcoming about what mental adjustments he's going to be doing, and he's certainly not going to be calling out his teammates or anything like that. But the fact is that whatever he's done in the offseason, from not just the physical standpoint, preparing for the grind of an 82-game season plus playoffs potentially, is that he was working on the mental side of what adjustments he needs to make. And so that's something that's going to be crucial to the Jets because, again, Laurent Brossoit was spectacular as a backup. This year it's going to be a competition between Capo Kakkonen and Eric Comrie, who's come back into the Jets organization. But you can bet that neither one of those goalies, barring an injury to Hellebuyck, is going to be logging much more than what Brossoit logged last season. So you can pretty much safely bet that Hellebuyck is going to make at least 60 games, 60 appearances this season again. But he'll be very motivated to really bounce back and up his game, which is already at world-class level, especially starting the first year in his long-term extension, which essentially is going to be making him a Jet for life when it's all said and done, Gino.
Speaking of a future Jet, a young guy trying to make his mark, first rounder for the 2022 draft, Brad Lambert looks like he's got a chance to be the second-line center. He's only 20 years old, John. Just one game of NHL experience. Is this a serious consideration for the Winnipeg Jets to have this kid play this much ice this early?
In an ideal world, I think they would love to see that from Brad Lambert, Gino. But having said that, again, like you said, a guy who only has one game of NHL experience, that's a steep hill. But the fact of the matter is that this training camp and the preseason, Brad Lambert's going to get a lot of opportunities to show his stuff, especially in the preseason. He'll get a lot of games in order to really show that he's able to make the jump from the AHL Moose to the big club. And the fact is that the longer that Cole Perfetti remains out of training camp, well, that creates more opportunity in a top six role potentially for Brad Lambert, a natural center, but somebody who can play the wing as well. If you take a look at this time last season, the Jets had Perfetti penciled in as their 2C, and that's how they started the season. But he only stayed in there for a few games before Vlad Nemestikov took over in the 2C position with Perfetti on the left wing and Nikolai Ehlers on the right wing. Well, in the early stages of camp right now, you've got Nemestikov in a de facto 2C with Ehlers and Alex Iafallo at left and right wings. And so there's going to be an opportunity for Brad Lambert to jump up and show his stuff. And it's going to be a steep hill, but the fact of the matter is that he did a lot of work in the offseason to be ready for this opportunity. When Kevin Cheveldayoff said back in late winter that prospects in the system should be taking note of the opportunity in front of them, Brad Lambert took that seriously. He's been training with Gary Roberts in the offseason. You talked to Mark Morrison, the Moose head coach, who was Lambert's head coach last season. He says that he doesn't remember a prospect in the Jets system ever taking part in 3 rookie tournaments, the Young Stars Challenge, or Classic rather, that the Jets prospects took part in Penticton, BC last weekend. Brad Lambert just did his 3rd tournament, and he did very well in that. So all these little signs are accumulating, along with his AHL experience, that this is a prospect that's really ready to seize the opportunity in front of him. Now, is he ready to jump up into the 2C? It's going to be a long shot, Gino, but I really think that the Jets have designs on him filling that role in the midterm. But if he did somehow surprise in camp and preseason and seize that opportunity, it may only be a short-term, a 10-game audition perhaps as a rookie. But again, the situation with Perfetti is creating an opportunity for Lambert to perhaps surprise and seize the moment.
John Lou with all the latest news, and there's lots of it coming out of Winnipeg Jets camp.